Has the brand of West Virginia actually fallen this far? That's the topic, man. I'm locked on West Virginia.
You are Locked On West Virginia, your daily podcast on the West Virginia Mountaineers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome back in. My name is Mountaineer Paul. I am your host here. This is Locked On West Virginia Nighttime Edition, Paul After Dark. Let's roll, baby, as we talk about, oh, man, something that really just makes me upset, to be honest. This episode of Locked On West Virginia is going to be brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. And thanks for making Locked On West Virginia your first listen, guys, and for being part of the Locked On Podcast Network where we talk about your team, the Mountaineers, every single day. I don't do a lot of realignment talk on this show, but I decided to jump on this one because I'm still wired tonight. I'm just so motivated to more than ever, and really, like, I'm one of those people when people are down in me or coming at me, man, sometimes I deserve it, sometimes I don't. But when people are, nothing motivates me more than people that don't like me. That's what it is at the end of the day. So the premise for this episode is, did the Neil Brown era screw us over? West Virginia and the SEC realignment talk has been going on for a few months now, a little bit more hot and heavy than before. Now that the ACC is potentially coming to an end soon, and West Virginia, what is their future going to be post 2030, 2031? And so a lot of people have opinions on this. And so, no, this is not your typical Mountaineer Paul episode. What we're going to do on this one is the Wild Ute, who has a pretty large following, also has a show that he does over on, I believe, YouTube, where you can find it. It's called, let me see, what's it called? Well, I thought he said the name of his show here. I wanted to make sure that I said exactly what it is. Tonight's Big Freaking Friday show. I'm not exactly sure the name of the show. I guess we can click on this and see. So it's called College Football Mafia. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I'm familiar with that now. So I just had to make sure I didn't want to speak out of turn. So they've got this tier list, right? UNC is a must-have. Primary targets: Virginia, Clemson, Florida State. High value fallbacks: Kansas. Strategic ads: NC State, Virginia Tech, Duke. Last resort: Miami and Oklahoma State. So here's where I want to take you on this. Number one, West Virginia absolutely deserves to be in the conversation here, even though it's been a while since we've been in any kind of realignment type conversation. And number two, is this due to the Neil Brown era that we're thought of this way? Remember, I told you guys earlier today in a show that I had a guy that I was in talks with. I believe it was on, I can't remember now. But basically his thought was like, West Virginia doesn't even come up when I think about these things anymore. They were talking about, oh yeah, I remember now. It was talking about winning the Big 12. And he was like, Paul, it's been over a dozen years. You guys haven't even really sniffed it. One time you were kind of close. That's it. Do we need to come to the conclusion that West Virginia can't even win the Big 12 now? And this was under Neil Brown, obviously. And now that we have Rich Rod back, we have high hopes. But at the end of the day, we still haven't done anything. So I'm going to make my case for West Virginia right now. We'll talk a little bit more about how I feel Neil Brown's era did us in a minute. So Welcome to what I'm going to consider Mountaineer justice, man. This is going to be basically a defense exhibit for why West Virginia deserves a seat at the SEC table, in my opinion, if it comes to it. Now, look, if we can stay in the Big 12 and stay a part of college football as a larger whole, then fine. I'm okay with that, honestly, going forward. I just want a seat at the table. That's all we care about at the end of the day. We shouldn't have to even think about this, but it's going to come a day where we may have to. And I'm not saying anybody wants to. But that tier list, the Wild Ute has here, UNC is a must have. Clemson and FSU are primaries. Even the basketball centric Kansas is a fallback, right? And inexplicably, West Virginia gets snubbed again in favor of Virginia Tech of all teams. It's like forgetting the coal in Appalachia, right? It's like, how do you forget the energy bringers, right? That's what we are. So let's do a deep dive with some hard data, some historical facts, some revenue figures, some viewership stats, and some other competitive metrics that I think prove West Virginia is just a fit for West Virginia or SEC. West Virginia and the SEC is not just a fit; it's also a steal. I think it would elevate the conference's football intensity, the fan passion, the geographic cohesion is a part of it. And we'll break it down section by section. And we'll compare West Virginia to those targets that he put up there a little bit earlier where relevant. So I guess we'll do the easiest part first. The historical context of this, right? Historically, where does West Virginia stack up? Well, obviously, the West Virginians almost joined the SEC over a decade ago, and the conference decision to pivot Missouri instead looks like a missed opportunity. But unfortunately, we haven't done a lot to prove that right. Although at the time, you could say West Virginia was way more successful on the field. Back then, it was viewership figures. Now it's not so much. So in September of 2011, amid that Big East instability that we had going on, West Virginia applied for SEC membership. And we thought from CBS Sports that SEC had confirmed that application, but then the SEC rejected it, opting for Missouri and Texas A&M instead to expand westward while prioritizing that AAU academic status, a factor that unfortunately West Virginia lacked. And even the other outlets, like you look at other outlets that strongly argued for West Virginia's the ideal 14th team, citing its football strength over Missouri's market appeal, but it didn't work. So why would we revisit this? Because I think West Virginia is the what if. West Virginia was coming off such a dominant era, 3 BCS bowl wins. Most SEC insiders rejection stem from the snobbery over academics, which is laughable now, and market size, and not the on-field stuff. If you fast forward to today, Missouri has been a middling SEC performer. They're 44-52 in the conference through 2024, and they've only had really one or two nice seasons in the SEC, and they do have a shared title, and I think they have a title as well outright, but I'd have to check that. West Virginia is 62-57 in a lesser league. So, but that's what the next segment's about. So obviously that's probably the biggest thing that's not in our favor is obviously how we performed in the Big 12 over the last decade. We're hoping Rich Rod can get us back to where we once were over the next 2 to 3 years because we need it badly, obviously. But if you look at our football success historically, football dominance matters, and West Virginia delivers that in spades. Obviously, the all-time record of 787 wins, it's the most by any FBS team that doesn't have a national championship. We know this like the back of our hand. We've heard it forever. That's more victories than Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Mississippi State. And West Virginia's claimed 15 conference championships. We know that, 41 bowl games. The BCS dominance, you got the 06 Sugar, the 08 Fiesta, you've got the 2012 Orange, and we thrashed all 3 teams, although Georgia did make a comeback. West Virginia has 37 ranked wins, over AP top 25 teams since 2000. That includes Virginia Tech, Miami, Louisville, and others, Oklahoma. So West Virginia has been able to sustain that over, if you count, since 2000. West Virginia has been ranked in the AP preseason poll 18 times, the final poll 20 times, and spent 306 weeks ranked, which is more consistent than the strategic ads like Duke or NC State. If you look at versus the primaries, North Carolina, Virginia, Clemson, and FSU, it gets even easier versus a couple of these, especially you look at like North Carolina and Virginia are probably more basketball schools with football win percentages under 500 all time. Clemson and Portland State are elite for sure, but West Virginia's head-to-head. Look at that Orange Bowl against Clemson, 70-33 shows West Virginia definitely was capable on our heyday of competing 1,000%. So West Virginia stacks up there just quite nicely, especially to the other two teams. If you look at the fallbacks like Kansas, NC State, Virginia Tech, and Duke, KU's football is notoriously extremely weak all time with a .430 win percentage, but they've got a brand new awesome stadium, and they've won for a couple seasons now. Just to show you how much recency bias there is in sports, think about this. How long has Kansas been good? Again, 3 years? Has it been 3 years? And now they're seen as a football program on the rise. It doesn't take long to turn it around. 2 consecutive seasons, in my opinion, can turn around a narrative. And West Virginia is nowhere near as down in the dumps as they've been, although we're getting close, unfortunately. Obviously, Virginia Tech and NC State have solid histories. Fewer bowl wins in West Virginia, fewer wins in West Virginia, et cetera. And then if you look at the last resorts, Miami and Oklahoma State, Miami's glory days have faded post the 2000 slumps. And Oklahoma State's 10-win seasons are impressive, but it doesn't match West Virginia's consistency with 9+ wins in 7 of the last 15 years. West Virginia has that underdog spirit. Think Pat White, think Owen Schmidt, right? And I think and West Virginia's fan base brings SEC-level excitement, and it would create instant rivalries with border states like Kentucky, right, and Tennessee. You can even look even beyond that, considering who may or may not join the conference. Revenue and financial value is the next thing we'll look at, but let's go to break first. On the other side, we'll check out the revenue. Where does West Virginia stack up there? We'll be right back. And this episode of Locked On West Virginia going to be brought to you by GameTime, of course. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories and not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where GameTime comes in. Makes concert tickets faster and easier than ever to get, and prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime. And look, you can save up to 60% off their killer last-minute deals. And if you're tired of the endless scrolling to find the best deal, GameTime Zone Deals pick can get the best seats in your section for you. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets today with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. The terms are going to apply, but if you create the account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off today, and download the GameTime app where you can get last-minute tickets, lowest prices. That's guaranteed, and you'll answer yourself the question of questions. What time is it? It's game time. In segment 2, I'm going to crack open 1142. It's code red time. What does that mean? Well, let's check it out. That means that it's the Neil Brown Power Hour. And I'm just kidding. So back to what I was looking at here with the revenue and financial value. I think West Virginia has some competitive earnings when you really look at it, and maybe even untapped potential. Obviously, the SEC expansion prioritizes money. West Virginia's athletic department is no slouch. West Virginia reported 125 in total revenue. That's per night Newhouse. with football contributing 47 to 65 million. In 2024, we saw 108 million in revenue against 109 million in expenses. Due to all the Big 12 travel, we're never going to report much of a. It just kills us. All of our teams combined that have to try the travel in the Big 12 absolutely kills our profit margin. So if it could be mitigated obviously by the way closer SEC travel, and definitely poised for growth under the new NIL/revenue sharing models, because West Virginia is going to max out at 20.5 in 2025. We've already talked about that. The Athletic pegs West Virginia as a $400 million team, top 60 among the top 75 schools. But that's undervalued, in my opinion, given its football focus. If you look at it, West Virginia's revenue growth has been 5 to 6% annually under Ren Baker. That outpaces inflation, and it avoids the bloat of basketball-heavy schools like Kansas, which had $119 million in bloat in 2023. And their football really doesn't hit us heavy for them. It's growing for sure, but it's still not there. Still a basketball school. If you look at some comparisons around the country, Clemson and FSU have 7 to 800 million valuations, but have recent national titles. Obviously, they also have the legal exit costs from the ACC, so that dilutes the SEC shares for now. UNC and Virginia, $500 to $600 million valuations. That's boosted by academics into the TV markets that they're in for sure. But football revenue is half West Virginia's 30 to 40. West Virginia's is 47 million. Theirs is 30 to 40 million. If you look at Kansas, NC State, Virginia Tech, and Duke, Kansas tops at 130 million thanks to hoops. The others hover around 100 to 120. West Virginia's football-specific revenue, which is 72.6% of the department total, would add nothing but football value to the SEC TV deals. Miami and Oklahoma State, obviously OSU's at 120 million, Miami at 110. West Virginia matches those without any scandals or anything like Miami's had, or the geographic isolation that Oklahoma State would bring to the SEC. Adding West Virginia would not dilute per school payouts. Actually, it might add some, and it enhances them via football revenue synergy, in my opinion. West Virginia would become a part of the SEC as far as from a fan base standpoint, everything you can talk about. We're in that region. We understand it. If you look at viewership, most people say it's king in realignment. West Virginia punches above its weight there. In 2024, Mountaineer games averaged strong numbers. You look at 4 million people watched the Penn State game on NBC. Pitt had almost 2.5 million on ABC. And others like Oklahoma State had over 1 million people watching, right? So West Virginia ranks in the top 20 in total viewership, 10.75 million across games, appearing in 11 Nielsen-rated broadcasts. That's more than Duke or Virginia. Attendance in 2024, the average was right around 50,000 per home game. This is another thing we're going to talk about on the next segment with Neil Brown. All-time highs like 70,000 versus Penn State in 1993. Well, obviously the stadium capacity has been reduced, so that's not a possibility anymore. And obviously it still tops out at 90%, which outpaces a lot of these other schools. West Virginia's market size at 1.8 million is definitely small. It's something that we can't dance around. It's absolute truth. But we have extreme potency and punch within the 1.8 million. At least 1.5 to 1.6 of the people in the state are probably West Virginia fans. You got the Marshall fans some still like West Virginia as well. But West Virginia commands statewide loyalty. There's no pro teams, obviously. We spill into Pittsburgh. We spill into the Ohio Valley area, and obviously into the Charlotte area very heavily. And then you go into the D.C. area where we're huge as well. We have probably 2 to 3 million alumni supporters outside of West Virginia alone. So if you look at Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, obviously they have massive views. But West Virginia's rivalries with other teams close to West Virginia, I think would absolutely raise the floor of what our viewership has been. Kentucky, Virginia Tech, and Duke. Kansas's football views lag, man. They average about a million. Virginia Tech and Duke rarely crack the rankings anymore, which is sad for Virginia Tech. And Miami and Oklahoma State. Oklahoma is pretty strong, man. They had almost 10 million in 2024. West Virginia had 10.75, so that does edge it out. So West Virginia adds a unique rowdy market. I think it's we're tailgating in the heels of West Virginia, right? And I think we boost the SEC's national appeal. The cultural and strategic fit is literally perfect for the SEC. Geographically, we border Kentucky, which is an SEC territory. We're literally 30 miles from Kentucky and not far from Ohio, not far from Pennsylvania. Obviously, we obviously border to Kentucky, Ohio, West Virginia, all border one another, although Ohio doesn't really count in this. Natural rivalries. Can you imagine Kentucky, West Virginia rivalry? I mean, I think it's one of the main rivalries that have never happened, right? Or if you want us to take a step further, could West Virginia be a big rival for a team like Tennessee? I mean, it just feels right. It just feels right. Culturally, pure SEC blue collar passion, tailgating traditions, country roads. I mean, everything that you can think of that are literally a Southern anthem, if they even care about being Southern anymore, unlike Kansas or Duke, right? West Virginia is football obsessed. So, over last resorts, even like Miami, who are scandal prone, they're always doing the wrong thing, or Oklahoma State, who, yes, Oklahoma's already in the state, by the way, but they're distant, far away. West Virginia brings stability, no legal baggage, immediate competitiveness. The SEC should invite the Mountaineers for our grit and our upside. And we're not just a fallback. I think we will be a frontline asset that the SEC has overlooked once and can't afford to ignore again. With 787 wins, over $100 million in revenue, 70% of that is football revenue, top 20 viewership, unyielding fan loyalty. We would thrive in the SEC, adding a very good value without dilution. And the Wild Ute got this one wrong, in my opinion. West Virginia belongs at the top of the list. Let's make it happen if it needs to happen at some point. That's my viewpoint on this. So I appreciate the Wild Ute for all that he had to say about this, but I believe this list is absolutely wrong. So those are my opinions on it. Let's go to break really quick. We'll come back and ask the question of all questions. Is this Neil Brown's fault? We'll be right back and find out. And this episode of Locked On West Virginia going to be brought to you by 5 Hour Energy Shots. Guys, we talk about those because we love them, obviously. And when you talk about 5 Hour Energy, well, it's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy. The transfusion is coming, man. Bold grape, ginger, and lime flavors. All of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this hole-in-one is one for your energy game, absolutely. Let's be honest. Some days on the course or off of it, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. What's the wildest course you've ever played at? I played at a place called Diamond Links in Kentucky that's way out in the country. It took me about an hour and a half to even get there. But, man, it had some good views. But that's a weird one because it was such a long drive. Did you have any odd challenges that really threw you off your game? Golf is about good times with good people and great flavors, of course. The grape ginger lime flavor gives you the best parts of the clubhouse go-to without chasing down the beverage cart. So if you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that's the number 5, the word hour, the word energy, and the .com. You can use my promo code, Locked On Golf, to receive 20% off your first order. This offer is valid only until September 30th, guys, on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. And the code's obviously not going to be good on subscription orders as well. All right, we are back here to segment 3, guys. All right, so this is the question that I think a lot of us want to know. You know, I have my theories and opinions on this, and to say that this is all Neil Brown's fault would be disingenuous, right? I mean, like that's just the truth. Like, It's easy to blame Neil Brown for sure. I think that's something most of us want to do. But I will say that if I had to assign percentages to it, I would say it's probably 50% Neil Brown's ish fault. Only because he was the head coach during the era that most would say is the worst era in our history, because we haven't had one this bad since the 60s or 70s, right? West Virginia's been very competitive over the course of most people's lifetime. If you consider the fact that we've at least been playing for conference championships, national championships, and the like every decade. And so the 2010s have been a horrible decade for West Virginia. From 2010 to 2020, the worst decade in the history of our history. And we're off to a bad start to this decade, the 2020s. So Neil Brown was the head for that. He made very few changes. He hired in a lot of cases, his buddies. A lot of people give Boyce and Morgantown a lot of hell, but he's not wrong about that. He did keep his buddies around. While some of them were very good coaches, I don't feel like some of them were not. I definitely think Jordan Leslie should have been changed probably post 2022. And for whatever reason, he asked to keep him around. Instead of getting Graham Harrell, we probably should have got Zach Alley or somebody like that. But we can't go back into the past and change any of this. I simply say, like I told you guys earlier, somebody I was doing a show with said, man, I want to believe in this Rich Rod thing, but you guys have been in the league for 12 years, a dozen years. Is this a baker's dozen this year? Baker's dozen is 17, or I can't remember now what it is. I don't remember what a baker's dozen is. It doesn't even matter. But he said, I'm starting to question whether West Virginia can win a Big 12 championship. I mean, it's been that long. And I think that kind of just nails it on the head with my thoughts as to why people leave us out of realignment talks now. We were always going to have our state size against us. We were always going to have some of the revenue figures against us. And even to some extent, some of the viewership, because, we're on the ESPN Plus, or we're facing Robert Morris. That game's not going to do great. Or we're facing even Ohio University. That game's not going to do great. And we haven't played our rivals. The game, you look in the past, and even games like against Syracuse would do better than a lot of our games in the Big 12. So, yeah, there's a lot of factors. It's not all Neil Brown's fault. I simply give him a 50%, assign him 50% of the blame, because he was the head coach for a lot of this, and this happened under his watch. Where else does the blame go? Do you give Ren Baker a little bit of the blame for the extension? I don't know. I feel like he made an educated guess there when it was his first year in the program. I think it would have been really hard. And then Neil Brown kind of proved him right the next year by having 9 wins. So I don't want to blame Ren necessarily. I think it was a tough choice. Hindsight's 2020. Obviously, making the change would have been for the best at the time, for sure. But then maybe we don't lead to this point where we have, Rich Rod back, where I think, culturally, I don't know if we could do as well or better than him. And I think that he is so, it's almost like kind of how I feel in a way, but I probably can't come close to how he's feeling. But, I feel like somebody that's 40 years old who's never had a lot of success. Like I'm making these, I'm making money now. Like sometimes I get checks that I'm shocked that I make this much money to talk about football. And it just makes me want, like I'm doing my 4th video today at almost midnight because I'm driven, right? I can only imagine what Rich Rodriguez feels like. You poured your heart into this career your entire life, literally, and you built your name at this place. And at the same time, it's like your worst memories are there. And somehow, some way, against all the odds, literally all the odds, even Andy Kotelnicki couldn't work out for us, even though he was going to be the guy, because Penn State somehow got into the playoffs. So, that even falls through for Rich Rod to become our coach. And I don't think that you can find a person that's going to be more driven, which is why I think kids are being held to a probably even a little bit higher standard than even before with him, just a guess, because of these issues. And I think we're so lucky to have Rich Rod back. Time will tell if that turns out to be the case or not. But overall, what I'm trying to get to here is the Neil Brown era has harmed us irrevocably. And the only way for us to turn it around, I don't think, I mean, conventional wisdom would say we're probably not going to turn it around this year, unfortunately. Very unlikely that we're going to win 8, 9, or 10 games this year. But beyond this year, right? We still have some time left. It's 2025, right? Then you've got 26, 27, 28, 29, possibly 30 to get it right under Rich Rod beyond there. And let's say you're in 2028 or 2029 and you've won or gone to a couple Big 12 championships by then. Pretty much all should be forgotten. And I mean, somebody's got to take and grab hold of this league like Oklahoma did. Why can't we be the guys? And all it takes is one big year. All that revenue comes in and you can just keep reinvesting and it builds. But we've got to have that first big year. If we get lucky and it happens this year, that would be great. So obviously the best case scenario is, if Rich Rod finds a way to do 9 or more wins this year, you might as well just go ahead and chalk it up, buddy. We're going to win a lot of games, but we have to see it first. And here's the other thing. I'll admit, as somebody who's watched us play in the Big East, I get it. Our level of competition wasn't the Big 12s. I don't know how many fans realize that. Week in, week out, we didn't face the quality of opponent we face in the Big 12. That's the truth. It hurts to admit, like it's easy to fall back on. We were a Power 5 and all that, and we were. But to sit here and pretend like week in, week out, we didn't have it a bit easier, I think would be disingenuous, which is really hard to say because nobody wants to make that admission. But I do believe that. And I think that the Big 12, I don't know if we recruit and have enough money to do what we did in the Big East, in the Big 12. But if there's one guy that can do it, I think it's Rich Rod. And really all we have to do is kind of be like, just in that conversation because of where we are geographically. I think we already have an edge. It's just we're not winning to justify it. That's what we need. We got to have the wins to justify it, beyond what we've been doing, which is barely bowl eligible. Nobody wants that. If you're mediocre in the Big 12, what the hell are you going to do in the SEC? So you've got to be overperforming in the conference you're in. That's like the number one thing. Outside of that, I think we just have to hope that it doesn't come to that. Honestly, your best case scenario is the Big 12 finds a way to stay alive. Even when it gets down to the last moments of all this, whenever at some point in time, someday, the final realignment rounds are going to happen. I don't know if we'll be alive for it or not, but I'm assuming it'll be in the next 5 to 10 years. At some point, someday, the final realignment, toll is going to sound. And we just need to do whatever we can as a fan base, even if we got to give all our money to the university. Like, how many of you here would raise your hand or just put your W in the chat or whatever? How many would give up half your income for West Virginia to stay relevant in sports? I'm being honest. I know I would. I would give up half my income for sure, without even a question, for West Virginia to stay relevant. I mean, I would. I would give up more, honestly. I've said it many times. If I won the lottery, if I won one of the big ones, like the billion or something, or even $500 million, like 500 million or something, West Virginia sports would be back, baby. Oh, would they be back? I would be like Portnoy. I'd buy the 5-star players. I'd be a nut job for it. I would give them so much money. I mean, I'd probably just I'd just say, here's 100 million and just say, just stay relevant or something. Like, I would definitely do that. It's funny. Like, I fantasize about that sometimes. Like, how you just have those daydreams to yourself? Sometimes I daydream about me winning a bunch of money somehow and being the hero. It sound, I actually with AI, I wrote a book about it one time, just kind of bored, just like write a book about a guy who wins the lottery and keeps his team afloat in realignment or whatever. It wasn't very good, but it was a fun idea. Obviously, they don't become any bigger fans than us guys. So I feel like, like us, you can understand where I'm coming from. Rudy, we don't have to have SEC money, man. It's not really. I just gave you the numbers. Yeah, I gave you the numbers. So we don't have SEC money in a large part because we're not winning. You know how much more money you make if you win? Millions more in basketball and in football. Literally millions upon millions more. So it matters greatly to the overall. But I mean, we're sharing the max revenue cap, 20.5 million. So Ren Baker's grown our economy in the big. He's grown West Virginia's revenue by 5 to 6% every single year so far. That's adding on to each show. That means since he's been here, he's grown up close to 20%. Ren Baker's elite at what he does. Give him a chance to cook. At some point, though, I mean, it can probably outgrow us, yeah. But if we're in another conference, then it doesn't really matter, does it? But either way, as long as the Big 12 stays alive, that's all I care about, to be honest. As long as we have a chance to play, even if it's just like I've said before, I know it's not ideal, but even if it was just for one playoff spot, I would be happy because at least we would have a chance to wake up to and say, at least we got a chance, right? But other than that, guys, I appreciate you for joining in. Thanks for making Locked On West Virginia whether it's your first, second, or third, or fourth one today. I can't thank you enough for being a supportive. To have, a couple hundred people here this late at night means a lot. And I'll definitely talk to you guys tomorrow. I'm probably need to go to bed. But thanks for making me your first listen, guys, and we'll talk again tomorrow. Good night.